Spoilers! Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Just FYI. Hello! So, set a goal of 65 books for this whole year. And as of today, we're at the end of September. I've read 75 books, which is a huge goal for me because normally if I hit the goal or go like five or six books over, I'm ecstatic for the whole year. So just knowing I'm here in September, like towards the end of September, I'm going to far surpass my goal this year. Like the little things, right? Okay, so let's get down to the real reason you're watching this video. I wanted to talk about my top 10 favorite books of this year so far. I've read a lot of books. I think most people know YA, young adult, is my favorite genre. It's my favorite category of books to read, especially if it's anything magical, fantasy related, epic, anything like that is my cup of tea. So I did step out of my comfort zone. I actually read several trending popular books this year that's definitely more in the adult world. And they were good. Definitely good. Not my cup of tea. There's typically a lot of like sex and bad language in it, and I can handle a little bit of that, but I'm not really too interested in a lot of it. I will get a little more into that once I get to the last book I'm going to talk about today for a reason. The first book I want to talk about is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. We all know this is a prequel to Hunger Games. I had kind of been putting it off a little bit, but one of my girlfriends told me she was reading it. We had chatted about books on New Year's Eve and said it was really good. And so I thought maybe I'll just try the audiobook and give it a go. And dude, it really blew it out of the ballpark. And I'm so glad that I listened to it rather than read it this year. So the narrator, his name is Santino Fontana, and I hope I didn't butcher that. He did such a good job as portraying snow in the books. I just thought like the monotone, everything was just spot on. It was very Snow. I thought it was so good. I was rooting for Snow. I wanted to hear like more. I wanted him to do the right thing in this book, and you're really rooting for him the whole time. And you know, I just think he was a psychopath from the get-go, because as you're rooting for him, you realize he was really probably being a psychopath in his mind, and it did not turn out well. Like, and I full well went into this book full well knowing Snow was not like a good character, clearly. Yet you still find yourself rooting for him. So it's one of those things. Anyways, the second book I want to talk about is The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. Hope I didn't screw her name up too. This was a trilogy, and I'm just calling out the first book, but definitely I might talk about stuff in all three of the books. That whole trilogy really stuck out in my mind. I felt like it was really original. The first book is set in a prison, and our main story, our main protagonist, her name is Kiva. She had been in this prison since she was like 9 or something, young and super crazy. When I get texts, I get distracted. She's the prison healer, and while she's an inmate, so like that's her job. It kind of keeps her away from the other inmates. She like brands the inmates as they come in. Like, how archaic is that? In order to save the newest prisoner that comes in, she agrees to do a trial by ordeal for each of them. And while there was a lot of magic in this book, I don't know why I expected, but the book wasn't necessarily what I expected. It was really good though. And another one of the series that stuck out in my mind, I think that I haven't heard a ton of people talking about this. Maybe it's on Book Talk. I'm really not on there super often. I just thought it was such a good trilogy. Very interesting. Once you get into like the second and the third book, there's definitely some interesting pieces. And obviously like the end of the first book, there's this main surprise, like this character was blah 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 the whole time. The next book I want to talk to you guys about is Hotel Magnifique, and that is by Emily J. Taylor, and I read this right when it came out. I had pre-ordered this book just based off of the premise, and of course I thought the cover was gorgeous. Obviously I don't have these books on me, like I just read on my Kindle. That's just how I've been doing for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. Hotel Magnifique really intrigued me because I'm a huge fan of Caraval and that series. And then, of course, I had read Once Upon a Broken Heart and was gearing up for the sequel, which is called The Ballad of Never After. That's by Stephanie Garber. But going back to Hotel Magnifique, the character is young. I think she's only 17 or something. I'm currently listening to this on audiobook again. Thought it was really good because she was a little more jaded, and I feel like it's a little more real life. Her sister is only 13, definitely gets taken advantage of in the way of they're naive, and they took her because she could sing beautifully, but the sister gets turned into a bird every night, and it was just not forthcoming. Magic is not really well received, except for in Hotel Magnifique, which changes locations like every night, and it's impossible to get an invitation to unless you're rich. But they were hiring and blah blah. Long story short, everything is not what it seems to be. Okay, the next book I want to talk about is I'm going to move into The Ballad of Never After. That just came out either earlier this month or last month, and that was the sequel to Once Upon a Broken Heart. Both of them kind of center around Jax, the Prince of Hearts, that we meet in the latter books of Caraval. There's a new character called Evangeline, and we see most of the book from her point of view. I love that it's in the same world as Caraval. It is just so whimsical, that's the word. And unlike Hotel Magnifique, I feel like the characters in this world are very like, oh my gosh, sunshine and rainbows and everything's great, and okay, I'm gonna take you at your word. So that I find interesting, but you know, I was a naive teenager too, so what else can I expect from these kids? They go to the Magnificent North. That's where everyone who was in the cards got like banished or whatever after the end of Caraval. An aspect of these books I didn't care for is they added vampires into the mix. And while I don't mind vampire books, I felt like in the first book it was so out of the blue from the world of Caraval. And obviously I'm not a writer, so I can't make these calls, but I felt like it was kind of out of sorts. Like it didn't make sense to me. And the vampire stuff plays a bigger role in the second book. And so while I'm not going to complain about it too much, it just doesn't fit for whatever reason. Like in my mind, it's not clicking. Oh, the ending. The ending was just crazy, and there's absolutely going to be a third book. And I hope Stephanie Garber continues to write more in this world. It's so whimsical, and you just don't know much about anything that I think she could write so many books off of this whole world she's created. It's so good. Anyways, that's my idea. Next, I want to talk about the trilogy of The Summer I Turned Pretty. That is by... Oh, let me look on Goodreads. Hold on. Oh, Jenny Han! Girlfriend. Obviously, The Summer I Turned Pretty came out on Hulu, I think. No, it's on Amazon Prime. Oh, go Amazon. Amazon's spitting out some good stuff lately. Anyways, I like Jenny Han. I feel like her writing is very juvenile. Like as simple as calling your dad daddy, blah, 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 blah. And I never like called my dad that when I was a kid. So I guess I'm just like, it seems more juvenile than it is for like 16-year-old or a 17-year-old, but maybe not. I don't know. I wanted to read the books. I thought I had read these, but I don't think I ever did back when they came out. And nobody prepared me for how sad these books are. The first book was good, and then like towards the end when you find out, I think it's Susanna, her name is, has cancer, and it just goes downhill from that. And then she like dies in the second book, and oh my gosh, I cried through the next two books. It was depressing, so sad. I felt like they did such a good job on screen. It translated well. It was really good. So that's another series that stood out in my mind. Obviously, I think a lot of the reason it stood out is because I did watch the show, which Amazon did an incredible job of. Amazon is spitting fire this year. That and Rings of Power. Woo! Chef's kiss. Fantastic. The next book I want to talk about is called The Summer of Broken Rules. That is by K.L. Walther. What like made me interested in this is basically they're going to this wedding on Martha's Vineyard, which I have no concept of because I am a West Coast girl. We've always been West Coast people. and I've never really been to the East Coast. I've been to Florida once, but I don't really equate that with anything north of Florida. This took place on Martha's Vineyard. It's this girl's, her family's property, and they've got to be like insanely rich. They don't talk about it, but come on, dude, like, you don't have property on Martha's Vineyard and not be rich. Anyways, so they're there for like a cousin's wedding or something, and the whole family plays this humongous game of assassin, and that's what drew me in. It sounded like so much fun, and I'm like so excited talking about it. I felt like I was there through this whole series. I was literally telling my friends about it when they came over to play games, like the next day after I finished it, and I could tell they were just like pitying me, listening to me. They were like, oh, that's cool, Holly. And I'm like, and they played assassin and blah. So it's like a Sunday or Monday through like Saturday thing, and they have rules, and it is just so fun. But like the girl's sister had died like the year before or before that, so there was obviously like this underlying sadness as well to it. It was very well played. It was such a good book. Highly recommend it. Okay, so now I'm on to The Secret Bridesmaid by Katie Burchell. I'm like butchering names like nobody's business. And it's about this girl, and she's a professional bridesmaid. So she like comes in, and she's basically a wedding planner, but for people who don't want people to know that they have a wedding planner. So she comes in as a bridesmaid and just does everything she can to help the bride, and it's like a paid gig. It was definitely a fascinating read. She finally gets the gig of a lifetime for someone famous. It was really good. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. Okay, last but not least, I want to talk about House of Earth and Blood and House of Sky and Breath, and that is by our queen, Sarah J. Maas. We love her, we know her, we've read her books. So I was super late to the party on this. These are very adult books. This is as adult as it gets. No, it's not. I lied. It's as an adult book as I will read. I'm in a Sarah J. Maas Facebook group, and so after Sky and Breath came out, I saw major spoilers for the ending. I'll get there in a second. So I was like, okay, I've got to read this book. So I started with House of Earth and Blood. I think I read these last month, and they're both 800 pages each. So they're good-sized books. House of Earth and Blood, I knew going in that like a good 500-600 pages of that is all set up. And so I was going in knowing, okay, like, all right, okay. And the spoiler I thought I had seen was that, like, either Cassian or Azriel was going to pop up, and they were going to start overlapping these books, because we all know that she's not finished with Court of Thorns and Roses, that series. So I was going in stoked. I really like Bryce, the main character. Basically, I like her. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Feyre, whatever her name is, from Court of Thorns and Roses. I think she kind of sucks as a character, but I like the other characters in that book. I'm also weird because Throne of Glass is my favorite series by her, and I like A Court of Thorns and Roses. I think it's good. I'm more intrigued now that there's going to be some crossover. So if they don't bring in my girl Aelin, I'm gonna poop on someone's lawn. Okay, I'm not gonna poop on anyone's lawn. That's a little far, but you know what I mean. Anyways, that was ridiculous. If my husband knew I said that on the internet, he would die. Oh. Anyways, okay, let's get to it. So these books were good. Again, the first one was so much set up, but I knew going into it, like, this is going to get good. And so the first book was very good. The second book was very good. Let's get to the last 10 pages of the second book. So for whatever reason, in my mind, the spoilers I saw, I thought somehow either Cass or Az was gonna somehow get into like the modern world, which Bryce lives in. And we all know that, like, Cassie and Azriel, they're in this archaic world. They don't have phones. They don't have anything like that. Whereas in House of Breath and Blood, those Earth and Blood, and in Bryce's world, it's a different story. They've got technology, they've got magic, and it's intertwining. So Bryce there's a whole scuffle or whatever, and Bryce falls into their world in Court of Thorns and Roses, and she comes upon Az. Fine, I expected that, but then they take her and they go to the townhouse. Every single character is there that we know and love in Court of Thorns and Roses. And at the very end, because there's like this language barrier, but the only one that speaks Bryce's language is Amryn. Boy howdy, I have big theories for this. I actually read other people's theories for what's going to happen with this crossover, and I don't like what I'm hearing. It's definitely based on some facts, but I like to guess my own theories. I'm not going to say them right now. That would take a whole nother video, but anyways. So those are like all of the books that I've read this year that have really stood out in my mind so far. Do you have a favorite book you read? I really am interested in what you've read so far this year. Definitely comment below if you're interested. And if you got this far, like, you're the best. Thanks so much. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.